When it comes to rookies and young players in the NFL, the hope and prayer is that they're going to start producing right away. But for the Detroit Lions, their young players are not only producing, they're doing something that is almost unprecedented. We're going to talk about it in this episode, folks. Stay tuned.
What are we? What makes us what we are and what we're going to be? It's grit. It's what we started with last year, guys. Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and three toes. I will beat your ass.
Can definitely compete with the big dogs.
10-5 end zone touchdown Detroit Lions.
You guys are unbelievable, man. I'm telling you.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello, Detroit Lions fans, and welcome on back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike, and as always, we're diving on in. But before we dive on in, I just want to let everybody know I'm not exactly feeling the greatest for this episode right now. I'm kind of a little sluggish right now. I'm kind of a little bit under the weather. It's not that I'm necessarily sick. I just am not really feeling it right now. But unfortunately, that's not an excuse not to push out content. I am able to do so, and I'm going to try my best because, hey, that's what you, the fans, deserve, and I'm going to give the best that I can, even if I'm not necessarily feeling my best. But I just wanted to let you know, in case you guys are wondering, potentially, I am feeling a little out of it as right now. But c'est la vie. Let's get into the content here. When we think about NFL teams, what teams in the NFL are absolutely trying to do is to be successful teams. They want to be good teams. They want to be successful. They want to be winning programs. Well, in order for a team to be successful, in order for a team to be considered a winning program, that team must absolutely be able to get good quality production out of their young players. And they need to be able to do it relatively quickly. I would say, if not almost immediately, like from the word go, they need to do it within like a year or two because they don't have a lot of time to try and evaluate these players. Again, every contract in the NFL for a rookie starts out at 4 years. The only way you get that fifth-year option is if you're a first-round player. So it's like, listen, you're not getting a whole lot of time to try and evaluate these guys, and they need to produce right away because it's like, hey, if they don't produce, you've got another draft that's coming up in a couple of months to where you could potentially find a replacement. That's my whole point. These rookies have to produce right away almost. And if not, somebody's going to come in to replace them. Now, who's responsible for this? Who's responsible for bringing in these players? Well, obviously, that's the GM, the general manager. They're responsible for drafting. They're responsible for shaping the team's future, whether it's through the draft, free agency, trade, whatever the case might be. Now, some GMs are absolutely horrible at this. Some GMs are okay at this. A lesser few still are actually good at this. And then there's the rare select few who are truly capable of taking the draft and making it into a weapon where they can exploit it to make their team better. Now, of those rare select few, Brad Holmes, the Detroit Lions GM, he definitely falls into that category. I know some people are going to be like, well, David, what about some other GMs? At least one other GM that instantly springs to mind would probably be the Eagles GM. Some people might want to talk about Les Snead, the Rams GM. Maybe you might want to talk about the Chiefs GM, but the point of the matter is that there's really not a lot of GMs out there that can take the draft and really use it to their advantage. But Brad Holmes is definitely up there. I would say he's probably number one, and then the Eagles GM is number two. However, that's besides the point. Let's just take a look at the evidence that we know of. In the 4 off seasons that the Lions have had Brad Holmes as the GM, Holmes has completely transformed and turned the Lions roster around from the skeleton crew he in essence got when he inherited it from Quinn Trisha in 2021. He has now turned it into one of the deepest and most talented rosters in the NFL that will contend for the right to go not only to the Super Bowl, but to win the Super Bowl. And the majority of that has come from his ability to be very, very good with his draft selections. Now, of those draft selections, many of them have become integral parts to the Detroit Lions roster. And they have already started producing fruit in the terms of being productive members on the field, whether it's in, gaining yards, touchdowns, tackles, interceptions, whatever the case might be. But of those young players that we know, there are some of them that are doing just more than producing. They're also leading. See, here's the thing. The ability to go out on the field and produce, that is a really great part about being a football player. But if you can not only do that, but you can lead, you can inspire, you can motivate your teammates while still doing that, that truly makes you a special player, because now you're showing a quality that very few people actually have the ability to use: leadership. Now, who am I talking about here? What am I talking about here? Well, first we have to understand that having strong leadership throughout the entirety of a team, an organization, whatever the case might be, is a core bedrock principle to just about anything in life, but it's especially true to football. And oftentimes when you talk about NFL football teams, most teams are going to look to their veteran players to try and provide the leadership because, hey, they've been through the ringer. They know what to expect. But again, as we're talking about here, every so often you will have a young player that is going to surprise everybody. They're going to step up, and they're going to be the ones that provide the example. They're going to be the ones that are going to provide that leadership. And the Lions, they have a couple that fall into this category. But for today's episode, we're going to talk about two specifically. The first one is right tackle Penei Sewell. Now let's think about this here. Penei Sewell, if you watch any of the post-game highlight clips, or you watch, whenever the players are kind of like in that circle pre-game and they're doing their rah-rah stuff, they're kind of getting themselves, all, hyped up and everything, who's the one that is almost always in the center? It's Penei Sewell. He's the one that's giving the motivational speech. He's the one that's screaming. He's the one that's getting everybody amped up. That's Penei Sewell. Penei Sewell is the kind of guy that is very emotional. He is very much a rah-rah kind of leader. But there's more to his leadership style than just that. And Hank Fraley, the offensive line coach, talks about it. Hank Fraley has been extremely high on Penei Sewell ever since we drafted him back in 2021. But this year, Hank Fraley has spoken quite highly and quite specifically about Penei Sewell in a couple of ways. Let's first and foremost take a look at this quote from Hank Fraley. Hank Fraley said this. He said, "Penei's like having another coach out there, even though he is a young player." Now, there are two parts to that quote that we have to take into consideration here. The first part is that Hank Fraley says that Penei is like having another coach out there. Think about how big of a compliment that is. Penei Sewell is one of the youngest players on the team, but he's saying he is like having another coach out there. He knows his job that well. He understands the scheme. He understands the responsibilities. He does not have to worry about him. He's got his you-know-what tucked away. He's got himself squared away with. Now, understand something here. For a player that young to get that great of a compliment, you have to consider the other guys that Penei Sewell's playing alongside on that offensive line, because Penei Sewell's the youngest on that offensive line. Taylor Decker, the left tackle, has been to Pro Bowls. Graham Glasgow is a multi-year veteran player, very good at what he does. Frank Ragnow, a multi-veteran year player. Plus, he's a Pro Bowler and an All-Pro player. Same thing with Kevin Zeitler. These are guys that know what they're doing. They are multi-year veterans, and yet Hank Fraley is specifically saying that with Penei Sewell, yeah, this guy's like having another coach. This guy knows what he's doing so well, I don't have to worry about him. But think about this. That means that Penei Sewell, even though he's a young player, like what Hank Fraley's referring to, he can count on him being a coach to other young players that the Lions have just brought in, such as Giovanni Manu, such as Christian Mahogany. He can take a look at Penei Sewell and be like, hey, that guy will pass information, that guy will help train those guys up, so that's why it's like having another coach on the field. That shows the maturity factor, that shows the leadership factor that a lot of guys don't always necessarily exhibit while playing football, and it's a truly special, rare trait to have. But Fraley didn't stop with his praise for Penei Sewell. He also went further, stating that he's talking about Penei Sewell. Hank Fraley is saying that Penei Sewell reminds him of a Hall of Fame player. This is what he said. He said, that's Sewell, reminds me a lot of Joe Thomas. Just how he prepares, how he takes care of himself, his mental mind makeup, and going out there on that daily grind to become a good or great player like Joe. So that's what I get to see, that daily competition within himself and with everybody else out here. It doesn't stop. Think about this. First and foremost, how, again, big of a compliment that is. Joe Thomas is a Hall of Fame lineman. You have to understand something here. Linemen do not get a lot of recognition in the game of football. It's usually wide receivers, running backs, quarterbacks, linebackers, those kinds of guys. Linemen do not get a lot of recognition unless they're like edge rushers. So Joe Thomas is in the Hall of Fame, and Joe Thomas played for the Browns back when the Browns were not that good. Hank Fraley played alongside of Joe Thomas for 4 years from 2006 to 2009. So Hank Fraley has firsthand experience of what kind of a player Joe Thomas is first and foremost. We know that Joe Thomas is a Hall of Fame tackle. So think about this, folks. Hank Fraley is saying, yeah, I take a look at Penei Sewell and I see the exact kind of preparation. I see the exact kind of mindset. I see the exact kind of competitive spirit in Penei Sewell that I saw in this Hall of Fame kind of player. Just think about that and keep everything in perspective. Hank Fraley was a good player when he played too. He was a pretty damn good center. But when you're talking about what he's talking about as Sewell as a player, with the equal, like I said, dedication, motivation, preparation that, freaking Joe Thomas had, it again shows the leadership and maturity that Sewell has had, not only to continue to get better, but to stay grounded now that he's gotten his new contract, now that he has become one of the most lauded tackles in the NFL right now. He's not letting that become the main focus for him. He is still pushing as hard as ever. He is showing that leadership. He is still exhibiting that dog mindset. But it's not just, like I said, Penei Sewell that has this kind of trait. There's others. But again, we're talking about guys that I actually have the ability to talk about. And the second person we're going to talk about in today's episode is going to be linebacker Jack Campbell. Now, when we talk about Jack Campbell was obviously the second first-round draft pick for the Lions last year in 2023. Jack Campbell had a lot to live up to in his first year, obviously as a first-round draft pick. And he definitely flashed, he definitely showed some promise in his great capability to be a downhill tackler on ball carriers. The problem was his pass coverage they had a lot to be desired. He was one of the worst pass covering linebackers in 2023. However, now we come into 2024. Jack Campbell is receiving very, very high praise. Just like Penei Sewell was receiving high praise from Hank Fraley, Jack Campbell is receiving just as high praise from his position coach in Kelvin Shepherd. And Kelvin Shepherd believes that Jack Campbell is going to do very well in the Mike linebacker role in this upcoming season. This is what Kelvin Shepherd had to say. He said, it's hard to get a full tell, obviously, physically on the linebacker position during this time of year due to the physical nature that we play, especially here. But he's exceeded my expectations, which were already high. He's come back further along than where I expected. Now let's take a look at that whole quote there. That first quote in and of itself is very reaffirming of the type of linebacker that Campbell is, and also that the Lions, clearly want him to be. Think about it. We know that Aaron Glenn specifically said he wants this defense to be much more aggressive, much more physically, more of an attacking kind of a defense. Well, if Kelvin Shepherd is saying that, listen, we can't really get a full tell on where he is right now, but what we're seeing, he is already well ahead of what we expected him to be. And he hasn't even put the damn pads on yet. So it's like, okay, mentally we know everything is there. He's one of the smartest guys that's on the team. We already have talked about that in the past. But the other thing about Jack Campbell is that now we're starting to see the physical aspect of his game starting to further progress. Not in the sense that he wasn't strong enough or he wasn't already physically able to play the game. It's like, listen, you just need time to physically acclimate yourself to playing the game, understanding how to take certain cuts, how to read the field, how to do this, that, and the other thing. That's what Kelvin Shepherd is saying. They are saying that, hey, he's physically starting to get a little bit more of an understanding of his body. He's starting to physically get a little bit more comfortable on the field in his position as the linebacker. And we're seeing that he is well ahead of where we thought he was going to be, and we haven't even seen him put the pads on yet, so that way we can get a full breadth and understanding of where he is at. Just think about that. But again, like King Fraley, Kelvin Sheppard further spoke on Campbell's progress and what it means to the Detroit Lions defense. Sheppard said this, he said, "I'm telling you, it's at another level." And he's talking about Campbell's progression. He said, this guy here's operating like an 8-year vet as far as making the calls, how he sees the standard of how we practice as a defense, how he sets the standard of how we practice as a defense, pardon me. And I think other guys are starting to look towards him now. Think about it. This is a guy that's only in his second year in the NFL. He just was a rookie last year. Kelvin Sheppard is saying this guy's almost a 10-year vet. He's saying that this dude has the mindset, he has the attitude, he has the preparation of a guy who's been doing this almost a decade. This is only his second year. And he's saying that there are now guys out there that are looking towards him because he is setting the example. He's setting the standard. He is the forebearer, he is the standard bearer of what the Lions defense is. Which is why I think one of the big reasons why the Lions drafted him. Because again, you have to understand something here. Jack Campbell, I think, was a 2-year captain at Iowa. Jack Campbell won the Dick Butkus Award in college the year before he was drafted, or the year he was drafted, whatever the case was. You're talking about a guy that's highly motivated, he's highly committed to his craft and to what he does, but he's also an exemplary leader. He has an exemplary leader quality about him. So it's like, hey, this is a guy that knows what it takes to be a linebacker on defense. There's a reason why the linebacker is called the quarterback of the defense. It's not just because, hey, you're in the middle of the defense and you see everything kind of like a quarterback. You're running the show. You're calling out coverages. You're shifting the defensive line. You're doing everything. That's why the linebacking position is so important. And one other thing that Kelvin Sheppard specifically said is how coachable Jack Campbell said. He kind of made a comment that I thought was rather interesting. Kelvin Sheppard said, "I could tell Jack Campbell the sky is green." And Campbell would said, "Yes, sir." And he's like, "You know the sky isn't green." But Jack Campbell will tell him, he's like, "Listen, that's the kind of mindset I have. If you tell me something, I am going to get it done. I am not going to argue. My job is to get stuff done." It's a very extreme kind of funny example, but it shows that it's like, hey, if Jack Campbell is told to do something within this defense, he's told how to work within this defense and what to expect. He commits it to memory. He doesn't argue. He is very, very coachable. Again, another trait that the Lions want. They want guys that are willing to be coached, not guys that are going to bring egos and personas into the freaking locker room that are going to be divisive and are going to cause problems. So think about it here. When you consider Jack Campbell and Penei Sewell, they're just two examples over the entirety of this offense and defense, the entirety of the team, as to what the types of current players are already doing. Because think about it. These are just young players, and they're pretty good at what they're doing, and they're already showing the leadership quality. So think about it. You've got young players that are doing this, and some of these young players that we're talking about are superstars, a.k.a. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, blah, 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 blah. But the fact of the matter is that these young players are having such a profound and positive impact on not only the team's performance by performing and producing, but because of the cohesion and the leadership in the ability for them to bring this team together and to operate with each other. That's not only a massive win for Brad Holmes and his drafting capability, but it's also a massive win for Dan Campbell because it proves that the Lions' future is in very good hands. Think about it. If everything like what I'm saying is true, and I have no reason to doubt that it isn't, you have a team that literally looks to each other on the team. They're like, listen, we don't care if you're a 10-year vet. We don't care if you're a second-year player. If you are able to provide that leadership, we want it from you. If you're able to produce more on the field, if you're able to give us more, we want it from you. It doesn't matter. Everybody here is equal. Everybody here gets the same shot. You go out, you do your job, you work hard. Again, the Lions are an egoless team. They are not going to say, hey, just because you've been to freaking X amount of Super Bowls or you're a household name that you're just going to get special treatment. Everybody gets treated the same. You work for what you earn. That's why I believe the Lions are going to go to the Super Bowl this year. That's why I believe the Lions are going to be a dynasty because they have finally figured out, listen, It's not about what this individual can do. It's not about what that individual can do. It's about what we as a team, what we as a collective group can do. And when you have young players within that collective group that are providing example, they are providing leadership, that only makes it even better. Because we already know the veterans know what they need to do. We already know that they can provide the leadership. But your young players doing the same thing, you can't beat that. You cannot beat that at all. That is something that is very, very special. It's very rare. But anyway, I'm going to end the episode because I need to wrap this up, but I just wanted to say thank you all for watching another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, I highly encourage y'all to watch the next episode. I also encourage y'all to do one of these three things: like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. If by chance you subscribed in the past and forgot to do so at the time, or you just subscribed and not had a chance to do so, again, I highly encourage y'all to watch the next episode, but I also encourage y'all, please, make sure you hit that bell notification icon at the bottom of the page, and make sure you subscribe as well. Also encourage y'all to share the content with your Lions friends and family members. Share it here on YouTube, share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook, share it anywhere and everywhere you can with everybody and anybody that you can. The more we can share it, the greater the channel grows, and the greater the channel has the reach, and the greater the channel spreads. And with that being said, again, I hope y'all are having a great day. I hope y'all enjoyed the content. I hope y'all got something that makes you happy, makes you smile. God bless, and until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.